Okay. Well, so I'll try to use my presentation, as I said, to anchor my thoughts and a few points that I have written down. But no, that's not mine. Or I'll have to do Brooks again. I'm not going to be as good as you, but you know, if I have to, I'll try. Let me say a few things about what has been discussed before. Basically, the discussion that I will go into, it's going to be both lower than the previous discussion, because this is on a global level. I'm going to talk about a country level experience, and it's going to be broader, because obviously the issues of high net worth individuals and taxing wealth are issues that cannot be solved on when we're talking about the 0.01% on a country level. So there's so much we can do. But what we can do as tax administrations in individual countries is to prepare ourselves and increase our effectiveness so that when this kind of cooperation happens, we're able to take advantage of this data. We're able to go after those individuals. Because if you have an ineffective tax administration, obviously, global cooperation will not help you. And we had issues in our authority with various lists from the so-called Lagarde list and Dutch yachts list, etc., that we were not able to really pursue with the kind of vigor that other jurisdictions would have been able to pursue. One second thought on Jim's comments, which I found very, very, very interesting. And the thought is about how do we connect the kind of work that the group is doing to the more general idea. How do we push on the public sphere? And as a politician, I have to think about those things now. How do we push the notion that taxation is fair, should happen? And I think we should link it to the work that IMF does on the labor flexibility laws. There's no other way that we have found to create wealth except through unemployment. I mean, basically, every year, 15% of the labor population becomes unemployed. That's 30,000 people every day in the US, 10,000 people every day in France. So that doesn't even depend on the level of unemployment. You have 4.5% here and close to 9% in France. And at the same time, 15% of the labor population gets employed as well every year. The difference in the productiveness of those two is the wealth that we create. So supporting those people, bringing them back into the economic machine, as it were, is what really should explain, if you like, why we have to tax wealth, because those two things come together. So anyway, I'll come back to the Greek experience, as it were. The state that the Greek tax administration was when we started making changes with it, with great help of IMF, some of it World Bank, but mainly IMF and Commission, was that we had a highly hierarchical, not at all focused administration, an administration that was pretty much out of the radar of the political system. The political system in Greece, effectively every year the budget was created like this. You had revenues on one side, expenditures on the other side. The negative difference, you could accept a level of deficit. The rest that you couldn't accept, you just wrote a line saying, we're going to combat tax evasion, and you would balance the books, and that would be it. This is what Minister of Finance after Minister of Finance for many decades would do. And obviously, when this did not happen, debt would cover the difference at the end of the fiscal year. This obviously came to a crashing end. So we had to focus on this. And I see here, obviously, Juan, Vicky, and many other people, and Axel, that have helped us a lot in trying to focus. The structure of the Greek tax administration was a very small headquarters that did not actually do any operational work. It would just publish rules and how the tax offices would work. And all the work would happen on identical tax offices, which were mini tax administrations on a local level. we made a lot of changes to that model, but basically the result of that was a very big tax gap and the problems that partially led to the default, effectively, of Greece. Now, what did we do? First, we had the semi-autonomous tax administration. I was the first to head that. We made a lot of changes, created functional units, large taxpayers units, large debtors units, high-worth individuals, and self-employed. So we tried to focus the work. We initiated new wage grids, new performance assessment systems. I mean, basically all the managerial changes that you would expect if we are to take a non-focused organization and try to focus it towards making results. We published a strategy and operational plans for the first time. So we focused on public revenue optimization, tax evasion detection, and tax and customs administration modernization. Obviously, this was also plagued with the general public sector problems that Greece had and to some extent still has. Slow procurement processes, etc., etc. So if you want to buy X-rays, when I talk to them 2 years later, 3 years later, they say, yeah, well, finally we bought the X-rays that we started buying for the customs offices, etc. So effectively, all those things stopped us from being effective as we should have been. So all those programs started. Risk assessment was an unknown word in the Greek system. Every year, the tax administration had to audit every company in Greece and every individual. Obviously, this is not physically possible, so we had to change that. We had to reverse. They would go in a company and audit the books from 10 years ago because they had to audit every year, so they started from the back to forward. We swapped us. We introduced effectively, with the great help from Vicky, the real estate tax, which was not existing in Greece. We only had a wealth tax on real estate. This was about a quarter of GDP. Now the real estate tax is assessed at about 1.6, 1.7% of GDP and collected at about 1.2, 1.3% of GDP. So this was a huge change. And obviously this happened at a time where the situation in Greece was very difficult. So rents were non-existent, the prices of those assets was collapsing, and at the same time, the tax on those assets quadrupled. And obviously this was not an easy thing for the Greek population to swallow and understand the rationale behind it. The modernization continued even after I left in 2014, mid-2014. Now we have moved on to an independent tax authority. So basically, now it's off the remit of the Minister of Finance. For the first time in the rules, the Minister of Finance in the law is not allowed to ask for specific cases, not even to ask about information about whether a case will finish or what's the state of the caseload, etc., etc. So the current, as Juan told me, the incumbent head of the independent, the governor of the independent public revenue administration, feels much more empowered than when I was there. So this process of the political system understanding the importance of having an independent tax authority, I think slowly it comes to some kind of culmination and fruition. And I'm hoping that we're going to see the results of that in the years to come. Time. Is it time? So I'll go very quickly. We added transparency. We believe that it's very important in terms of the targets, in terms of the results. Transparency is much more important if you are to see results. And I'm going to finish with a few words. You can see on the bottom right the property tax. This is the Vicky Perry effect when we introduced the extra tax, how the revenues jumped up. But basically Greece has reached the average in terms of revenues. Even in 2013 we overperformed in my tenure the revenue targets. This allowed the government in 2014 to give out a so-called social dividend. 450 million was redistributed to the people. And we see that we have more revenue on the consumption and VAT side and less revenue on the direct taxes side. Up to a point, this is understandable for a country like Greece. We have about 10 million people and close to 30 million tourists. So by taxing consumption, obviously you're capturing a segment that doesn't live in Greece. Our tax rates are very, very high. And obviously, Alex mentioned about how IMF recommendations perhaps need to change. But within the current situation, the fact that we have Bulgaria close to us, Cyprus, and other jurisdictions with very low taxes, this is creating a huge problem. So one of the proposals that I'm making publicly in Greece and trying to simplify our tax our rate structure is how to simplify it and move towards a 20% tax rate, both on the VAT and on corporation tax and on personal income tax with specific exemptions. I don't want to perhaps bother you with details, given that the time is up. Perhaps we can talk about this kind of simplification. But I can also say that there are alternative proposals by professors of economics that propose different kind of structures. All of them, however, agree that Greece is currently being overtaxed under the social security contributions, and B, it needs to simplify a lot the kind of system. And the economic adjustment program has actually made things worse. I mean, the changes in the tax laws have been happening every 3 months or 6 months. The tax professionals don't understand them anymore, don't remember them. The auditors don't remember them. The judges don't remember them. There are many things that you can do, that you need to do. The cadastre, the judicial system, there are other things that you can do if you are to be effective. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.